Hello everyone and welcome to the IELTS webinar that we're going to be presenting today. Thanks for all of you. You can see a lot of people have joined, so thanks for all of you for joining this IELTS webinar. So today we're going to be focusing on the speaking part for IELTS. So as many students know that the speaking part students can get quite nervous and it can be quite intimidating talking to an examiner. So our expert, our specialist in IELTS, David McDonell, is going to give you some amazing tips how to ace the speaking part too. And he's going to give you some ideas on what kind of questions are you going to be asked and how to respond to them. So if you go to the next slide, you will see that these are the three things that we're going to focus on today. So number one is what matters when aiming for 7.0 in IELTS speaking. The second part is we're going to look at part 2 analysis and tips. So please, if you have a notebook next to you, maybe note down some of these tips because they're going to be really important for you to achieve your 7.0. And we will also answer your questions at the end of the session. Now, if you look below at the screen, there is a Q&A button. So please write your questions in the Q&A button, and at the end of the session, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. We may not have time for all of them, but we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So, before we start, we're going to do a quick poll. So in this poll, we're just going to see if you guys have done the IELTS test before. So you have in front of the screen an intro poll. So just click, if you haven't done the IELTS test, that's fine. You can just press the last button, but if you have, you can press what score you have achieved in the past. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to do the poll. So it'll be interesting to see the results. All right, thank you so much for doing the poll. So most of you have never done the IELTS test before, so that's interesting. So this will be really informative for you guys. This session will show you how to deal with the questions in the IELTS speaking test. So before further, any further ado, we'll move to David McDonell, who's going to give us some amazing tips on how to achieve 7.0 in IELTS speaking. Take it away, David.
Oh, thanks, Ivan. Hi, everyone. My name's David. I'm one of the IELTS teachers here at English Unlimited. Today, I'm just going to share some tips about how to achieve a better score in the speaking test. The take-home message I want to give you today is very simple. All right. If you want a better speaking score, include more ideas. All right. So it's basic and very simple, but very practical. Include more ideas. I know it sounds too simple, but basically more ideas mean more complex structure, more complex grammar, and more specific vocabulary, usually. All right, so to get started, let's first just look at what the IELTS speaking test involves. There we go. So the IELTS speaking test has 3 parts. As you can see, the first part is the interview with general questions on a range of familiar topics. That one takes about 4 to 5 minutes. The second part, which we're going to look at a little bit today, is the long term. And in this part, you have to speak for 2 minutes without interruption. This is also usually on a familiar topic and related to personal experience. In total, including preparation time, it takes around 3 to 4 minutes. The last part is the discussion, in which you're asked more general and abstract questions about the topic in part 2. That takes about 4 to 5 minutes. So in total, the test can take around 11 to 14 minutes. So if you haven't done the test before, that's basically what the speaking part is going to include. All right, so how is it scored? The examiner looks at 4 aspects of your speaking: your fluency and coherence, your grammar, your vocabulary, and your pronunciation. Fluency and coherence means how easily or how fluently I produce the vocabulary and the grammar. But it also includes things like, is my speaking well structured? How often do I hesitate? Hesitate means to stop and say, like I might do in this presentation today a little bit. And is what I'm saying relevant to the topic? So all of these are included under this particular aspect. So how can I improve my fluency and coherence? There is no one way to do this because it involves so many things, all right? But there is one practical thing that we can do. No matter what our level is, this is going to push us in the right direction, all right? And that is simply to focus on creating more ideas. Again, I know it sounds simple, but hopefully you'll see what I mean as we go through this. Coherence means linking the different parts of our speaking in a way that makes sense. So when we have more ideas, we're actually forced to link them and connect them together. Let's just look at a simple example. Take a simple question such as, what are your plans for the weekend? Now, when an idea comes into our mind, it's easy or even natural to just say the answer. For example, Netflix. But this is not really a good answer, especially in a test situation. All right. A better answer will acknowledge the other person. For example, as you know, explain the context with the pandemic situation at the moment, and maybe even provide a reason. It's not such a good idea to go out. And then I'll answer the question. So I'll probably just stay home and watch Netflix. All right. So that is automatically what's happened now is as soon as we've got a few different ideas, we can see that it's starting to get a little bit more complex. Now let's talk about vocabulary. Regarding our vocabulary, the examiner looks at how accurate it is, and again, if we're using a variety of words, not just the same ones again and again. How can we improve our vocabulary? We need to consciously try to expand our vocabulary. To do this, of course, nothing new. I recommend a weekly vocabulary list. There is nothing that can go past weekly vocabulary lists. But this should focus on not just learning standard or general expressions. Those are important, but after we start to learn those, we need to start learning less common words, less common expressions, and also idiomatic expressions. And these weekly word lists that we're using should be both topic-based and grammatically based. So in other words, things and also linking ideas. All right. So again, let's look at an example. So I'll just use the same example again. Instead of using perhaps a standard expression like, I'll probably just stay home and watch Netflix, we might say, I'll probably just stay in and binge on Netflix. So the word binge on means to do a lot of something in a very short time, whether it's shopping, drinking, whatever you want. For example, in this case, maybe I'm going to watch 10 episodes of, I don't know, K-drama and not get any sleep. You can see that while words like watch are good and correct, idiomatic expressions are often more expressive and often include more specific meanings. In this case, the idea that I'm going to do a lot of it in a very short amount of time and probably not get any sleep. Using these kinds of expressions in the right way shows that you have a broad vocabulary and can use it accurately. All right, so let's look at the grammar. Regarding your grammar, the examiner will consider if we're using a variety of grammatical structures and also if we're using complex structures. This is an important part of getting a higher score. And are you using the grammar accurately? Obviously. And something that's not often emphasized enough is that we're using the grammar, using grammar accurately also means that we're using the grammar that is natural or appropriate for that context. All right. So it's not just that we're using that particular grammar, we're saying the grammar correctly, we're using it correctly. So how can I improve my grammar score? In your study, it's good to first get control of the standard grammar, all right? This is really, 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 really important, all right? We always need to focus on that. But then after that, all right, after we feel like, okay, I've got a control on the basic grammar, I've finished upper intermediate, for example, something like that. We need to start focusing on using a variety of grammar to say the same thing. All right, so we're moving from standard to a more natural response, we're using grammar that is more natural or appropriate for that particular context. Okay, and it takes time, but it also takes practice. All right. In other words, we have to consciously try to do it. For example, instead of just saying, I usually watch Netflix, so I will probably just watch Netflix. Right? We might try to use a more complex grammatical expression to say the same thing. For example, knowing me. All right. So in this case, down here, knowing me, I'll probably just watch Netflix. This is expressing the same idea that, well, this is what I usually do. I know my habits, right? It's doing it in a shorter way, but it's expressing the same thing. And we've also got some adverbs in there to make my ideas more specific, all right? In this case, probably and just. So all together, all of these things, they're really expressing the idea that it's not anything special. All right, so this is coming through the grammar. I'm not actually saying it. Grammar can express. The last feature, of course, is pronunciation. And the most important aspect of pronunciation is, of course, that people understand what we say. That is, that we are comprehensible. All right. Usually that means that we use a variety of English pronunciation features, not only the right individual sounds, but also the intonation, linking it all together. And also keep in mind that it does include speed. For a test situation, we don't want to speak too quickly or too slowly, all right? So a calm, natural speed in a test situation is what's best. How can I improve my pronunciation? Well, pronunciation is a super big topic, so I'm not going to say too much about it here. It's possible, maybe one of you can put a question in there saying, can we have a pronunciation seminar? And maybe my boss might organize that. That's probably a good idea. But today I will mention two things, all right? Because IELTS is an international test, we want to focus on reducing any interference from our first language. Interference means instead of using the pronunciation that's good in English, we're using the pronunciation from our first language. All right? It's very natural, we all do it. Generally, I always advise that the best way to improve is simply to increase our awareness of English pronunciation in general. All right? Sometimes we just don't know and we think we're saying something correctly, but actually we're not. And, you know, I've been in that situation myself. It's quite frustrating, but also embarrassing and a whole lot of other things. So awareness is a really important thing. Secondly, we need to identify and focus on those things that are difficult for us personally and practice them. Right? And no, that's all for that. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, maybe if we might even think about doing a pronunciation webinar later on. So here's one example, stress in syllables, all right? Now, as you probably already know, English changes the stress when we change the form. There's millions of these little funny things in English. So take the noun comfort, all right? The last syllable is pronounced fit, but in the adjective, we don't say comfortable. For and ta become fta. Yeah, fta. And we say comfortable. Right? So English has many, many of these things, and it's kind of endless, actually. But what's important is that we basically constantly remain aware and listening for these types of things, because it doesn't end. It's a constant part of learning the language. All right. Summary. Generally, the pathway to a more successful score is by using more complex responses, more complex grammatical forms, more specific vocabulary, and of course, more English pronunciation features. But I also want to remind you that there's one simple but important thing that we can do that's going to push us in this direction, all right? And that is simply to include more ideas, all right? All of these things are only possible when we have more ideas. When we have more ideas, we have the opportunity to put them together in ways that are more complex, and expressive and specific. So let's have a look at how we can put all this into practice. All right. So speaking part 2 involves a topic card. They give us a topic card and they will give us 1 minute to prepare, and we have to speak for 2 minutes. Right? Here's an example. Describe something you own which is very important to you. You should say where you got it from, how long you've had it, what you use it for, and explain why it's important to you. This is a fairly typical kind of question for part 2. They are usually on a familiar topic, something about your personal experience. How can we approach it? There are 2 simple things I want to mention. First is preparation, and the second is elaboration and detail. All right? Preparation is key. They give us a minute, so we should use it well. All right? We want to use that time to note down our ideas. I know this sounds obvious, but you would be surprised how many learners do not do it. It's very easy to think, I've got the idea in my mind. I don't need to write anything down. But actually, when we start speaking, it's very easy to forget. Okay, so writing them down is a really good thing. I usually recommend that we use the first idea that comes into our mind. It doesn't really matter what it is, within reason, of course. Then we want to think of several ideas for each point, not just one. All right, we want to make several ideas for each point, not just one. We want to note down any details and any specific vocabulary, but be careful, only write keywords, not sentences. All right? Elaboration and detail. So this is basically, I want to give you an example of how we don't want to answer. Let's imagine that I choose to talk about my bicycle. All right. For example, I have a bicycle. I bought it from a shop. I bought it 6 months ago and I ride it to the station and back. I ride my bike because it's a long walk to the station. Yeah, obviously that's not 2 minutes, okay? So now it's easy to see that if I only answer each question simply, each part, then I'm not going to reach that 2 minutes. I can even just, it might even just finish in 10 to 20 seconds. So elaboration is a really important part of getting to the 2 minutes. Right? When I include detail, you can see that my story starts to have more parts and more color. Right? In terms of my language, it starts to have more complexity, and that's what we want. That means that we have more complex and specific language. For example, instead of saying, I bought it from a shop, now I have an opportunity, for example, to use a relative clause. I might say, I bought it from a shop where my friend works, or I bought it from a shop, my friend who knows a lot about bikes works there. And we might continue. I've only had it for 6 months, but it's already had some problems. For example, the front tire keeps going flat. However, it was okay because when I took it to the shop, they fixed it for free. Maybe that's just because my friend works there. I don't know. So you can see, basically there's a lot more detail and it gets quite rich and there's a lot to talk about. All right. There's a story to tell. Always think about it as there's a story to tell. You can see that when we have more detail, not only is it much easier to reach that 2 minute mark, but also your language will usually become more complex and more specific. More ideas means more complex language, and that's what we want. Okay. So we're going to ask now if anyone wants to volunteer to have a go. Robbie? Robbie, are you awake?
I'm awake. Hey guys. I'm just, so if you're watching on Zoom, because we have people watching on Facebook and on Zoom, if you're on Zoom and you would like to have a try and get some feedback from Dave answering speaking part 2 in IELTS, there's a raise your hand button. So if you go to participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then on the right-hand side at the bottom again, you'll see a little place where you can raise your hand. So we're just going to pick one. If you would like to So Luis Alfonso, I can see that you have your hand up. You would like to have a moment of truth. Several hands have gone up now. Okay, I'm going to try Luis Alfonso because he was first. Oh, there are 4. Oh, okay. Wow, you guys are really keen. That's nice. I'm going to...
Stop, too many.
Too many. All right. Luis Alfonso, I'm going to invite you to talk. All right. So, Luis, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can indeed. All right. So I'm going to leave you with Dave, and
Okay.
he's going to give you a chance to get some feedback. All right. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, Lewis, how are you?
Okay.
How are you?
Good, good, and you?
Very good, thank you. Nice afternoon. Where are you? Which city are you in?
Right now I am in Melbourne.
Cool. All right. You guys are in lockdown. I hope you're staying safe.
Me too. I hope that it's finished soon, so
Good.
we can go back to normality.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. Okay. So did you have a chance to think about the topic? So we've got this topic, the example topic card. Describe something that you own, which is very important to you. You should say where you got it from, how long you've had it, what you use it for, and explain why it's important to you.
Okay, so I have 1 minute to think.
You'll get 1 minute to begin, to think of some ideas. But if you're ready, you're welcome to start whenever you feel like it.
Okay, give me 30 more seconds and I will start.
Sure.
So while Luis is having a think, Dave, I think what we'll do is we'll have one more person after Luis as well, because we still have some hands up.
Okay.
So I'll choose someone from that list.
Great.
Well, I will go with an easy topic that maybe will be my cell phone, my iPhone. Yeah, it's easy because where I get them, I think in Mexico. I'm from Mexico. I get it in I think it was in an Apple shop. How long I have it? I have this cell phone since last summer. I changed it because my other phone gets crashed, so I need a new one. And practically I use it for a lot of things. Maybe right now I am using it to get into the Zoom. I'm using it to stay in contact with my family in Mexico. I also use it to use my free time to get into social networks or something like that. And sometimes I use it to upload some achievements that I have. And it's so important because I have a lot of information in my phone, like some bank account details, some password from my social networks, some photos and videos. So I think it's a very useful and important device for me. So I think that's all.
Okay, so that was 1 minute and 30 seconds. All right. So
Okay.
just so you know, that was really good, by the way. Thank you very much, Lewis.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of feedback, so we noticed that when we were describing what you use it for, I think you were using the word use it, I use it quite a few times. Now, that's quite natural, I would say. There's nothing too wrong about that because in the context, it's okay. But what we want to do in a test situation is maybe try to use a different expression for the same thing. So we might say, for example, I use it for communicating, but sometimes I would use a more specific verb now. I would say sometimes I also save a lot of my data on it. So instead of saying use it for that, we might just change the verb to something more specific, right? And that's, I think you know that, but yeah, doing it in a test situation is always a bit difficult. And just one thing I wanted to mention was that we should be a little bit careful of pronunciation of company names internationally, all right? Because as we all have the same companies, for example, Apple, all right, we all have slightly different pronunciation of things, all right? So it's always a good idea to
Hello?
hello,
Sorry,
sorry.
Dave, you just cut out for a second there.
Yeah,
It's
no,
always a good idea to, and then you left us hanging. So you can jump back in.
I always do that. It's a good idea to learn the pronunciation of those companies in that other language. So for example, in English, we say IKEA. I know most Europeans hate that, but that's what we say. Not IKEA. We say Apple, Nike, all these types of things. Yeah. So your pronunciation of Apple was a little bit more ah. We want to use that ah.
Okay, okay. Perfect. Thanks for the retroalimentation, the feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave, I think you paused again for a second there, but we have one more person who's going to give it a go. Thank you, Luis. I think we can, even if we're all in a webinar, we can all give you a Zoom little round of applause, because that was it's always very nice to
Thanks, Luis.
to put yourself out there in front of a lot of people and get some feedback. So next up, and the last one for today is going to be Florencia. Are you there? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. All right, I'll leave you with David.
Hi, Florencia.
Okay, can you hear me well? Because I can't, now I can't hear you perfectly.
Perfectly. We can hear you perfectly.
I'm with my earphones and perhaps it's not working right
No,
now.
it's fine.
Okay, I wanted to following your exercise. I was thinking on my bike, and I was thinking my bike is, I call it Negra Bonita. It's like the nice black girl because it's black. I brought it from a friend of mine. It's very important to me because I brought it from a friend of mine. He gave me as a gift here in Australia. It was my first gift here in Australia. And he was a rider. My friend bought it a new bike. That's why he gave me the old bike as a gift. And he did like a huge ride trip from London to Istanbul in Europe, the whole Europe riding trip. And I have that bike, the Negra Bonita, is black one, and since I have it I think for 3 months, and I used to not just to exercise and go for the office and work and all that stuff. I use it more for visiting some places because we enjoy with my friend to go to Yarra Valley and some path, like riding path. And it's important to me because that changed my experience here in Melbourne, because now I can visit some other places and save money because I bought public transport. And at the same time, I think I'm faster. I don't have to like take trams and trains. So I love it. I love the experience that I can go everywhere. I can go to the beach. I can go to parks, and it's fast. So it's amazing. I really enjoy that experience.
Well done. That's you've basically got almost up to 2 minutes exactly.
Okay, I can. Okay.
That's fine. So if you're under by about 10 seconds or something like that, it's not a problem. They'll just probably ask you, they'll encourage you to speak a little bit more, or they'll ask you another question. Really good. That's really good. You did a really good effort there. So just a little bit of feedback. First of all, you're connecting your ideas really well. You're using a lot of reasons and explanations and things like that. I was thinking that maybe you could have actually told us a little bit more about the bike, all right? Because one of the things, when we actually start describing the bike, we start to get more detailed, specific vocabulary, all right? So you might have told us what type of bike it is, what make, you know, perhaps, I'm guessing you're talking about a motorbike, is that correct? Or a Florencia? Oh, no, that's all right. Her mic's off. Yeah, so yeah, we might describe the actual make of the bike, its capacity and all these types of things. Things that are not necessarily interesting for most people, but because it's your bike, maybe you know about it.
Technical things.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Little things and little detail provide very specific vocabulary. And in a test situation, specific vocabulary is a good thing, okay?
In that case, we have to tell a story or something like that?
Well, you did a good job with that, actually. Yeah,
Oh,
you did.
thank you.
You did a really good job with that. You were explaining to us where you got it from. So you were talking about, I think it was your boyfriend, is that right?
And the pronunciation?
Okay, so a few little things with your, I would say not your pronunciation, but your grammar, okay?
Okay.
So sometimes with verbs, remember that English verbs, and I think it's the same in Spanish, if you're what's your first language, sorry?
Spanish and Italian.
Oh, Spanish and Italian, okay. So as in Spanish and Italian, some verbs have an object and some don't, all right? So I think in your case, I would focus on making sure I know if the verb has an object. For example, he gave me as a gift, all right? So he gave it to me as a gift. Or he,
it to me.
yeah, don't forget our pronouns, but especially the object was dropping out a few times.
Okay. Well,
So that's just a little thing for you to focus
great.
on. Yeah.
I will think about it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, no, it's nice. Nice to hear from you. It's great. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Robbie?
Yeah. All right. Thank you again, Florencia. And yeah, I think we can go on if that's all right, Dave.
Cool. All right. So actually, I just want to finish up now, all right, this section. And just to summarize again, one way to push ourselves to improve is to think of more ideas. So, for example, the way Florencia was just doing, all right, she was including quite a few ideas about where and how she got her bike, all right? And in other words, telling a story. And that's really good. It means we can get to that 2 minutes, but it also means that we've got more complex structures, more complex grammar, more specific vocabulary. At the same time, we want to make an effort to use more pronunciation features of English language, all right? But again, that's quite a separate thing to this. Thanks for your time. I hope it's been a little bit useful. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Now I'll hand you back to Ivan.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was fantastic, really informative, and I'm sure the students have got a lot out of it. So before we continue, we'll take a look at the timetable. So currently, those students who are not studying with us for ELICOS, we have a current VLE timetable, which is the virtual classes online. They're from 10 a.m. to 2:15 p.m. in the morning, Monday to Thursday, and the evening it's 5 to 9:15. So it's all 4 days a week. And then Friday we have the optional boost classes if you want to attend. We also have the mock IELTS tests on Fridays. So if you guys don't know, you can attend, if you're a student at APC or English Unlimited, you can attend for free on Friday, the Boost IELTS class, and you can try the test. And then the teacher's going to give you feedback based on the mock test. So it might be something, if you're going to do the IELTS test in the future, it might be a good idea to do the mock test on a Friday. Just the next slide, if you look at the next slide, you'll see that if you haven't enrolled, our ELICOS fees are $100 per week. Until the end of 2020. So if you need more information regarding this, you can go on the website and there's an online chat, live chat, where someone will be able to direct you or inform you about this further. So you can look in, so it's $100 at the end of the year. So before we do the Q&A session, so I just want to remind you guys that there is a Q&A button. This is your opportunity to ask as many questions as you can. So press the Q&A button, ask a question, and before we move to the Q&A part, we're going to have a poll. So there's going to be a poll that's going to pop up on the screen. So today we focused on speaking. Maybe next time you want us to focus on something else. So what IELTS skill do you struggle with the most? Is it still speaking, or do you feel like writing is a little bit more difficult, or listening or reading? So we'll give you a few seconds to press the button that suits the answer suits you, and what you feel is the most difficult, and what you struggle with. All right, so we'll give you a few more seconds. If you haven't done the poll, please do it now. And if you haven't written a question for the Q&A, you can do it now too, because we're going to answer your questions straight after this. All right, that's the end of the poll. So let's see the results. So the skill writing and speaking. So most students say writing is the most difficult and speaking is the second most difficult. So maybe I think less students find it difficult because, Dave, you told them everything they need to know. Yeah. So now they don't find speaking as difficult. All right, so now we're going to have Robbie, who's going to run the Q&A session and ask us a few questions based on the questions that you've posted in the chat or the Q&A button.
All right, thanks Ivan, and thanks Dave, and thanks to the guys who participated. And again, it's always a really brave thing to do to try to do this in front of a whole lot of people, so well done. First question, and this one's for Dave. What are some examples of complex grammar that are easy to remember? So I think what the question is, you know, when you go into a test, you want to have a few things, a few little tricks in your head ready to go. So what's an example of some complex grammar that you can just, you know, just drop on the examiners?
Okay, so great question. Complex grammar basically means we are starting to combine different grammatical features together. So I might, instead of having just one simple sentence, I'm going to have 2 or 3 sentences or ideas, but they're all going to be connected together in one sentence. All right. So the simple way to do that is, of course, through doing linking. All right. That's the first place to start. So we've got our cause linking, like because, so, as a result. We've got our contrast linking, however, although, even though. These types of ones are really good to start with. There's a lot of exercises out there that you can do to focus on those, and they're really good to get the basics correct. After that, you want to start thinking about things like relative clauses, non-finite clauses. I would go with relative clauses first. So linking expressions and relative clauses, you're going to start to get some very complex structures.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. Next question, and I think this will be for you as well. How do I overcome nerves in the IELTS exam?
Yeah, well, I'm the same. I get nervous. I'm nervous now. All right. So
you shouldn't be. We're all friends here, Dave.
How do you overcome nerves? Everyone's a little bit different. I think we need to find our own personal way to calm down. For example, this afternoon before this seminar, I went outside and sat in the sun for about 20 minutes. And for me, that was actually just how I managed to take my mind off this presentation. All right. It could be getting some fresh air. So some people, we need to do some like actually physically relax our breath and just calm down. Yeah, it's a very personal thing, I think. My advice would be try a few different things and see what works. The only way to try that though is to do some some mock tests. All right. So if you come along and do some mock tests, then you might get the same feeling, and you can practice relaxation techniques before that. Yeah, I think practice relaxing before a practice test.
Yeah, definitely a good idea. And
can I add one more thing to that, Robbie, if that's okay?
Oh, please, by all means.
I always feel like I always tell students it's like have a try your best attitude. So don't go into it thinking it's life and death, or everything's going to be over if I do the test and I don't do it well. Just go in thinking I'm going to do my best, and let's see if my best is good enough. And that's the attitude to make you less nervous.
Yeah.
So Ivan's the National Academic Manager for English Unlimited, by the way. So that's why he's qualified.
I'm not a student.
Yeah, that's right. That's why he's qualified to answer the question. And here's an interesting one. If I go to this school, will you be my teacher? I think that's for Dave. But
would love to be. But I don't know.
Yeah, David is the IELTS teacher in the evening. So Ivan showed you the timetable before. And so the evening timetable, that's when David teaches IELTS. So if you do decide to enroll with us at English Unlimited, that's when he's teaching. So
Evening class.
yeah, there you go. You have a fan, David. That's good.
Come and join. Come.
Yeah, so there was a question actually about brands, because we were talking about brands in some feedback that you gave to Luis. And someone said, should we just avoid brands? Should we avoid talking about it? That's the question for you, Dave.
No, I don't think so. I think it's, it's part of learning the language and the vocabulary and it's also part of becoming aware of the strangeness of the pronunciation in English. For example, IKEA, it's totally unnatural in most European languages to say I, but in English it's totally natural. We put a double vowel there. Instead of saying IKEA, we say IKEA. And yeah, that's it. I think maybe it's actually a good way to learn some of the standard things that people do in that language.
Yeah, and I think we've got another question that kind of continues on from that. It's someone from the Czech Republic. I'm Czech, and Skoda Auto have a Czech name with an accent. So instead of saying like Skoda, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, because Skoda is Swedish, I believe, right? So is it a Swedish car brand? I think so. And I think that, yeah, so obviously if I say it in English, I'm saying it wrong, if you know what I mean, right? If it's a Swedish word.
That's a good point.
How much did you, I mean, things like Ferrari and like what we would say Volkswagen, right? But of course in German it would be pronounced differently. I suppose how much should we be worrying about this is the question, Dave.
Yeah, not too much, I think is the answer. But I think it's a really good way to learn about the language. And actually, if you are concerned about it, if you remember when Florencia was speaking before, all right? So Florencia introduced the name of her bike, all right? And the way she did it was she said, in Spanish, or I think, or in Italian, I can't remember, it's called, we say, blah, blah, blah. And so that's a really natural way to introduce a word from another language. So for example, if you wanted to say Skoda with the correct pronunciation, you might say, as we say in I can't do that because I don't know that correct pronunciation. I only know the English one. But yeah, introduce it if you're worried about it. That's also true for place names, I think. Be careful with place names. We naturally say the name of cities very quickly in our first language. For example, I might say, I live in Woolloomooloo. Right? Now, if I'm speaking Spanish and I say Woolloomooloo, they're going to say, what? I need to say it a little bit slower. I need to say something like, I live in a place, it's called Woolloomooloo. And they'll go, oh, okay. Just so that they know what I'm saying. It's not just a sound, so to speak. All
right, so we have one final question. And so right now we have a lot of people here in the Zoom webinar with us. We also have some people watching on Facebook. A lot of those of you who are in the Zoom webinar are current APC students. And the question is, when can I join the class if I am an APC student? So I just want to touch on the free classes again that APC students are free to join.
Yes, so we have every day at 2:30, we have a plus class, which is an extra class. It's not IELTS related, but on Friday we have the IELTS mock test. And that's from 9 to 1:30 every Friday. And that's free for all APC and English Unlimited students to attend.
So yeah, if you want to get the details in terms of the Zoom room, just go to, just on the screen here, you can see live chat. So apc.edu.au, that's the website for APC. You can go to the live chat there, which will pop up in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's the same for eu.edu.au. So that was the last question because we have to wrap up. It's almost 45 minutes. And so we have one final poll, which I will give to you now. Last one. Here you go. Did you find the session useful? How many more of these should we do? That's what we're trying to find out.
Yeah, that's the real question.
You guys are being very nice. I'm looking at the scores coming. You're being very, very kind. So that's good to see. All right, I'll give you another 10 seconds, so you have to have fast fingers. 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. The results of the poll. Yes, that's very good. Very kind. Thanks, guys. We'll keep you posted in terms of more webinars that are coming your way. And thank you very much for attending. That's it. Now, this webinar is going to be posted on YouTube, and I'm sure we'll be sharing it again on Facebook in the coming, I suppose, early next week. It's the end of the week. We need to take a break. So early next week, this will be posted on Facebook. So I'd like to, on behalf of APC and English Unlimited, firstly, I'd like to thank Dave for presenting. It was very nice. Yeah, otherwise, we'll thank you very much for coming, and see you when we see you.
Thanks for attending, guys. See ya.